Okay, Michael Crosby running for POTUS. How about we talk about the learning experience for America? This latest series of election nuances, I would say at the very least, we have to consider that there is a tremendous learning experience. I think we really are going to need to do an intensive review, a master review of what's been happening. Let's call it the last decade or so, because we have things that shouldn't be happening in elections. We have things that just shouldn't be there. We also have a sequence of, I would call them overall, learning adventures, because I really think that many voters are learning different things. There's a lot of lessons being put atop the table that are occurring. The question is, are they sitting in, or are we just getting more and more upset with each other, more and more stuck into our different situations? Because we have a culmination of subfactional interests that we've never really seen come out and show their stuff atop the table the way they have. Now, the freedom sequence and the free speech sequence, this is something that's supposed to be part of America, but our deep core barriers, let's say the Constitution of the United States, are in jeopardy. So this is something that can be both an opportunity and a warning. We can also look at it as a mandate for participation. If we simply put the reality, there are too many citizens that are simply saying, we have to have items addressed. We have to resolve these various issues. And we have a lot of them, and a lot of them might seem very complicated. I've been working very heavily on solving the mass economic modeling situation for decades. We need it. We need it badly. We need consistency. But we also have an array of other issues that have been growing that many people are concerned about. For instance, I want to save 3,800 kids a year by banning cheese. And there's really not many takers on that. People just don't get excited. Now, if you go to numerically a lesser cause and say, we want to save children from being massacred by having people come in with weapons of slaughter and wiping them out, there seems to be a lot of people that are really into booking on that one. But apparently the far greater numbers of people dropping dead by something that is more of a silent killer doesn't seem to grab hold, even though it's a far easier item to address. Simply banning cheese, and you're going to save way more lives of children than you would save from a mass shooter solution. And it's doable. It's very doable. You can do that real quick. Ban cheese. But we have other stuff. Now, by the way, notwithstanding the amount of adults that die in these situations. But if we're focusing on the gun issues, we have core elements. We have constitutional core items. You cannot violate the constitutional core items, say many people. They're saying, hey, you can't break through and do certain things because you're destroying certain barriers. And there's a lot of argument for that. I mean, if you look at various minutes of Congress and actions of Congress, you will see items where they're talking about temporarily putting bans on the selling of grenades, and then after a certain point, the sale of grenades can continue. So I'm one of these people that says, hey, wait a minute, let's take these issues, let's start making little sections, and then we're going to put all these little sections together and work them in computer models. And we're going to bring AI into this, so we basically can work with this. We can make modifications and changes. We can see the difference between how things model out with a real-time strategy simulations and compare them to statistics that were, well, they could have been taken live, but at the time they were taken live, that we can integrate real statistics so that we can understand how to add more thorough, elaborate statistics. There's a lot of complexities to this. I could spend hours talking about the various complexities in the psychology and how you would design these things. Massive computer chips would be needed to do this. But notwithstanding that, moving forward, we need people to come to an understanding of upgrading their educational grasping of material. We really have to do this as a nation. Now, I'm going to say, I'm not saying that we need to basically imprison all these people that live in an Amish village and say, we're going to force you to change your life. We have to understand that there is a certain brilliance to individual diversity, that there is a certain beauty to individual diversity. So I'm sure there's somebody that's going to design the Amish town. I've seen plenty of it in gaming already. And there is a beauty to this. I mean, to me, it sounds like a vacation / getting in touch with having hard work directly in your hands. An experience that I think many people would enjoy for a weekend or maybe 3 or 4 weeks. But then again, if we track back to the reality is, yes, we have to respect areas and allow them to keep a certain amount of purity, because we can't allow that diversity to perish. We have to protect that. That's part of who we're supposed to be, what the country's supposed to be. But if we track back into our mainline road here, the reality that most of us are in is something where we would look at one another and say, what's your excuse? Because maybe we don't have an excuse. Maybe we don't have a right to have an excuse. We have to protect our kids' future. And the economic intricacy of mass competition worldwide is highly demanding. And there's simply no way that we're going to be able to provide a future for our children if we don't upgrade education, if we don't upgrade options. This is an actual tactical table reality on the large scale. It has to work that way. It's one thing to have pockets of variant diversities, different realities. It's a totally different thing to say, what do we have to do at a national level? And we need to be adult about this. So this brings about different understanding where, on the whole, on the large, sometimes we'll have to look at certain people and say, I'm sorry, but your personal neurosis of your personal insanity does not model out properly on the tactical table. And it's dangerous. We can't allow it. Examples: a pandemic, COVID. Among the different types of pandemics that we can have, cold relief medicine, those who take extremely effective cold relief medicine, let's call it top grade, the best of the best of the best that you can get, is going to have you dramatically reducing how many times you are going to sneeze and snot on yourself and on other objects and in the air and on other people, etc. Scientifically, we call this an addressing of the spread pattern. The reality of the spread pattern is somebody can stroke a pen and remove cold medicine from the shelf that is relief medication that has been approved for 75 years. And the statistical effect nationwide can end up bringing an added death toll rate that is comparable to the death rate losses from Vietnam. This is not a joke. This is not a game. We cannot allow gross incompetence or people who want to grandstand for their little career moves to fabricate little things that they think sound really good because they're authoritarian legalist, but they're not doctors. So those of us who are tactical table technicians, so to speak, are going to look at this material and say, hey, we have a lot of stuff we have to look at to put this all into the models and get it to model out properly. We have to be aware of the vast array of statistical variances that make all of this happen. And we have to look at them very intricately to understand how this is going to model out properly. And the reality is, as a tactical table operator, technician, I'm going to tell you straight out, the concept of somebody using a writing implement, whether it's digital or whatever, that causes the death of 50, 60,000 people is noticeable. It's detectable. It's something we can put into scientific understanding and repeat the various processes of identifying this from many different angles and have that mathematical solutionism come again and again and again. So the reality that different people's grandstanding and political maneuvers are murdering vast numbers of people is a reality. So if we want to be forward moving, we have to be completely honest with how the math is going to work with this as we look at a tactical table. Because we can have different characters. We can bring out a character that says, this little character on the tactical table, if we're going to game it, if we're going to model it, if we're going to experiment with it, we can have characters come out and say, hi, how you doing? I'm a spy, and I'm not going to let people know. And I'm going to invent ways to destroy entire societies, and I'm going to invent false arguments to basically manipulate the situation. And I'm looking for ways to kill as many people as possible. I'm looking for ways to understand how to create pockets of where people will be partially diminished so that their work productivity will be reduced because I'm a spy and I want to take advantage of the financial gains of making profit with my tactical applications, as at the same time there's a duality and I'm destroying my opponent country. So here we have to be honest with communications atop the table and say, hey, let's go over the material. Let's discuss this. Let me do some basic informational polls right here. These are basically comments, perceptions of various types of people. So we have people that are doing their idea of report cards. They're doing their itemized list, so to speak. And they're going to say, well, we're comparing the death toll connected to what happened with COVID of Trump versus Harris. And they're saying, well, we think that Trump probably killed an extra 265,000 people because of the way he addressed COVID. We don't think that he was anywhere near as effective as a leader and implementing what should have been implemented on a fast-paced calendar scale. Okay. Then you have someone else that says, well, we're comparing Kamala Harris, and we think she's killed more than 60,000 people because she's associated with a narrow group of prosecutors and people that have been making ridiculously dumb false arguments to remove cold medicine types in stages over the course of 2 decades that has ended up having a big, huge, wonderful COVID surprise of bang, in 1 year we got 50, 60,000 extra dead people. So they're putting this in their report card saying this is reality. as they're comparing. And some would say, okay, well, on this one, Kamala apparently kills less people than Trump. Except there is also that little set of stars, 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, that give the extra notations at the bottom that say, well, the item that Harris is working with is an ongoing, permanent, continuous problem. Ooh, we have to look at that another way. So here we have just another series of notches, of subcategories in that big, massive report card that we're working with in the presidential campaign. So let's do some other generalized polls. We've got other polls out there of a poll, P-U-L-L, not just P-O-L-L. So we're talking about the differences. So a poll, if we do a poll of different diversities and opinions that people are laying out, people are upset over the gun matters, various levels of gun matters, and there's lots of individual complexities. There's some very serious collections of legal material in these areas. And a lot of them, people are looking at the core issue. They're saying the constitutional level. You know, we're entitled to this. You know, the same way many people in the previous arguments would have attached to them, we're entitled to make our own medicine and remedies. This is a self-evident item that constitutionally was our right. These are all items that have to be addressed. So if we're looking at various items involving guns, there are other fragments. You have rarer participation, lower numbers of people that would say there was supposed to be a considered comparison according to certain forefathers, stating that comparing the Switzerland, and understanding that their mandatory gun policies have a family carnival situation that practically has weekly meetings where people get together and they find the human factors. They enjoy interacting together. They talk about variant issues, and it's a much more friendly environment as people are interacting about all of these things. Whereas our modern era today is a lot more decentralized in many ways. So there's something to be said about this, because we have Switzerland that has moved forward into having 24/7 mental assistance, so to speak. And it's not mental assistance, it's just basic social, emotional stability assistance. You know, whatever is your problem, you can talk about it. You know, we have advanced situations onto this as an offshoot coming out of my archival research that says we need 24/7 services of a vast full array that are going to help you succeed in life, help you understand far more efficient, accelerated course applications, accelerated advisory applications. You need the answers to, you don't need to go to school for 6 years to get answers in some areas. Maybe you can do it in a 3-day course and have very effective lectures. Maybe you can do it in a 3-hour course. Maybe you can do a 30-minute YouTube video that can bring you up to speed, that harvests the best solutions from the aforementioned to bring the solutions to the top of the table where you can work with them and resolve your various situational problems or tasks, challenges, needs. These can be economic investment, so forth, etc. So there is the intake coming in of an ultra rarity, and that is that there are some of us that are working on extreme new options of economic modeling software to be able to match up into that great tactical table device. Actually, it's more like walking into a huge warehouse or airport hangar, and there's lots of tactical tables because there's lots of categories that have to be addressed. So the feeling some of us might have is to say that if you have such an option, you can walk around and take a peek at these various tactical tables in operation and understand more about what's going on, where you can see visually a lot more interaction and moving examples to basically instill a better understanding in your mind. So an additional reality that we have a dramatically lowered cost of how AI can help address issues where it's not like consulting with one expert, whether it's a psychologist, a tactician, an investment advisor, whatever it is. It's like talking with the accumulation of knowledge of all of our educated people that we have, not just in the whole country, but in the whole world. This is incredible power, and it is solidifying. It is surfacing. It is in existence right now in certain areas, certain categories. The data that is either not available or should be available or is going to be available, respective to mass shootings, we can draw from many types, not just mass shootings of children, but any kind of instance, and address what are the various situations overall. What are the deficiencies that were real? What were the challenges that all of these parties were facing? And we can now tabulate it into a brand new understanding. Because we can keep ignoring the reality that we have so many other people that are not like us, or we can embrace it and we can make it part of our lives. And we have people, basically musicians, that do this. We have creative individuals that are attempting this. So we have mediums that do address this. So the other ways we can address these statistics is that having that fuller understanding of what solutions need to be done. I'm going to tell you there are people like me that have already been doing this. The archive was encompassing thousands and thousands of solutions that would affect each and every citizen in their daily life. And this is, in my view, part of the ways that is going to help society be more harmonious. And this is important. It really is important. I consider that many problems of life are economic, because if you're not in economic harmony, you're under too much stress. And myself, the only kind of stress that I would rather be under is a creative stress for an artistic application. So here can be part of the solution, but we have other parts of the solution. Neglect. Do we neglect training properly at an early age? What we need to do for our children to continue instillment of the constitutional mindset and various features of the Constitution. The Swiss would say, yes, we have forgotten how to communicate the core understanding of our constitutional entity. There are people who have explored these possibilities, sampled parts of these types of understanding. So we have some samples of work that has been done by people out there. So I could mention things like my SAR policy. Gee, I hate the word policy, but plan, so to speak. Basically recognizes that everybody's being recorded in full 3D. I would call it that, 70-90% of our bodies. Because we can see a blade of grass from outer space. And that means no escape policy. Let's add in all those computers, the assistive AI tooling that helps everybody with their job, whatever it is. And basically say, yeah, we can provide a no escape policy involving all mass shootings. That's easy enough to do. That's just more money for security. Now, I'm not going to say that we don't need mass security. I've already got a policy of areas for the border and whatnot, things that I believe make sense so that we can keep an even playing field understanding to keep protecting ourselves from vast changes of influxes of people coming into the country, so that we can have a better grip on what we already have as a situation in the country and not have a lot more surprises. A far more comprehensive plan, I believe. But if we track back in the understanding that we have different people with different viewpoints, you can pull these different viewpoints. The problem is when you do an intensive analysis of each human being's overall mass scope, and you put that into your little models to work atop and in your tactical table, you end up finding out that human beings are not perfect and everybody has deficiencies. Welcome to reality of life. Now, many of us are working on having a more diverse understanding and how to quickly address these various types of opinions and how to have a better responsive system. AI is going to be a massive assistive tooling device. You can walk around with it like it's training wheels. You might think it's intimidating, but you would be amazed how fast it would increase your diversity of understanding across the board for literally any category whatsoever. I'll mention, by the way, that AI is a completely different device. It's a different tooling for those of us who have done mass tactical table grasping. So for people like me, I can usually work and adjust very fast to given situations utilizing AI. And that's something that we need to bring forward with all of our children because of the mass world economic competition factors. There's a difference between people who work on scientific understanding and those that work on faith. Now, oddly, there's something else that we have to put atop the table and work with. People on faith have more happening in their mind than they might be addressing, because basically you have people that have hidden parts of their mind that are addressing different types of issues. We have spiritualism that many people just aren't grasping the understanding of. So when we have people that are saying all of these things, that they know that something is wrong, that they know that there's this mass corruption, it translates out into different levels, and you have people that are saying that they know that it's right to be able to disqualify delegates in Congress because there's something wrong with the vote that has occurred, and there's been forms of rigging at a large collective level that invalidate those votes and those delegates. And a lot of people would be making decisions like this based on faith. Now, the thing is that oddly, statistically, they're not necessarily wrong. The impurity factors at a national level of the shortcomings of every citizen as who we are basically has massive flaws. We allow government to be corrupt. We are part of government that is corrupt. We have different levels of responsibility with different people, and the awareness levels are at different levels. And you can have people that are similar to me that can break out something and say, I can show you exactly what's wrong with certain given categories. Or you have other people that would say, I already knew that. I just know that. It's just an item of faith. So there is a certain reality to this, that sometimes people's notions, which we might call faith, actually have their brain discovering something about a process mathematically. It's not clicking, there's something wrong with it. That doesn't mean overall that they're missing something. They are getting something, they're just not understanding how the details pan out. And again, this is another reason why we need to put atop the table and work the tactical tables. We have to do this. We don't have a choice if we're going to compete economically with commerce worldwide. In effect, when it comes to guns, if we don't resolve the problems that individual citizens have economically and other ways, we're not going to have any effective solutions. It just won't happen. You'll only have people doing more grandstanding, and we'll have more memeism. Understanding the various types of characters that you can put atop and in your tactical tables is very important. Gamers understand this in depth because gamers basically play with various types of characters very often. So the understanding of jumping to another character is just another variant type. So if you're young, you're fast-paced. You're moving at a speed using devices that your grandparents could barely conceive of. But that is the reality of today. And that is a reality that we have to grasp because there's different levels. Gaming is for fun. I guess that's the idea. But the reality that now gaming and real strategy, real-time strategy is now melding with AI and with mass economic modeling. This is the new merger that is well underway at this moment. And understanding these powers and options are crucial because this is tooling. These are devices that can be enormously helpful in your life with anything and any category. This is why it's so important that we have to stay at the cutting edge of chip technology. Because the reality that our lives are constantly in an emergency is reality. So when the apparent reality would seem that there's only two candidates running for president, that's actually not the truth. There were more than 3,400 candidates that had registered in with the Federal Election Commission. But the reality of what we're seeing in the media is almost like a form of paranoia, where you have people that are desperately trying to protect the country from disintegration. They're enormously concerned about it. So they're going with the average statistical understanding that people voting in third-party candidate concepts usually gravitate back to one of the two candidates. But that doesn't always happen in American history. Now we've been currently in one of the largest anomaly patterns that we've seen for a long time. And you barely get them to acknowledge in the media what those numbers were, because you had Kennedy hitting basically close to 20% nationwide. You have many other candidates that are still pulling more than a solid point. So these values, these variances, at one time, by my analysis, got up to 31%. Literally 31% of voters right now in the country want somebody other than the two candidates, the two main candidates. They really want something more. We need more. On one hand, can we allow incompetence? Can we allow corruption to continue as it's run? Because as it's run, I have filed complaints from the very beginning. I was the first declared presidential candidate. I filed insurrection panel rights because we're an insurrection. These matters have not been resolved. So when I have filed various items, it's right for me to bring up legitimate arguments because they're not just scientifically based, they're based on facts. As for more than a year and a half, I've been displaying incredible evidence involving the violence that has been plaguing, attacking my campaign, my archival interest. Lately, I've been displaying a lot more of the down-to-earth, plain hard facts, the plain hard facts of the documents in play, of the blacklisting done by various parties, of the dereliction of duty, of the various constitutional violations of various parties. And there's a list. The evidence is strong. It's pretty much irrefutable at certain levels. It's irrefutable at certain levels. So we have Julie Sue connected to $31 billion in fraud. That's been verified. Well, there's a lot more. She blacklisted people in California, including me. She violated constitutional laws that deemed her actions an act of war or acts of war. These are very serious violations. The evidence is definitive. There are others. So as you see the various evidence that's in these presentations, you'll understand the violence. You'll understand that artifacts older than the Constitution of the United States are jeopardized. As time moves on in the calendar, items are lost, stolen, destroyed because of the security problems created by these various parties, by the AG of California, by Julie Sue, because of Shirley Weber. And they date back, going all the way back to Kamala Harris, because there's been other attacks upon the campaign. And people need to understand the Constitution of the United States is clear. You do not attack archivers. You do not destroy artifacts older than the Constitution. You do not attack archives. You don't attack their financial being. You don't attack them. Read the Constitution. The punishment is the death penalty. This is not a game. So as I move forward with my campaign, I was the first candidate. I don't have to withdraw. I can say, yeah, I'm a Democratic candidate. I don't have to withdraw against a candidate that has broken the law. I don't have to withdraw against a candidate who has musters, supporters, co-workers that have broken the law because they're disqualified. They're going to be disqualified, hopefully for sure, in front of Congress. They should have already been disqualified, but the people who are supposed to police the system are biased, and they're abusing law. They're inventing policies that, in effect, are diabolically opposed to the Constitution of the United States. Because the priority of taking an oath to the Constitution and to protect the Constitution means the content of the Constitution. So when you have people that are archivers and candidates and artifacts are involved, Their primary oath means that they're supposed to protect the artifacts. They're supposed to protect the archivers. They're supposed to protect the process of elections. They're supposed to protect the voters. But that's not what they're doing. So that means other people have to also be indicted along the way, because they're claiming false policies, that they're somehow excused or that their hands are tied. That's impossible, since they've taken an oath first to the Constitution before entering into the building, into the job. So this is something that is of the highest importance for people to understand. There are differences between those who would grandstand and get up on podiums and lay falsities, and those of us who have real definitive evidence. Because we have a lot of people that are using statistical analysis that are drawing upon real life situations of citizens, making speeches so that people can identify with situations as though they are the champion of those situations. But the reality is, I'm one of those people working on the vast scope of solutions that you need, that apply directly to you. Actual solutions, hard work. And I am also, in all reality, coming under extreme violent attack. There's also additional realities. Getting to the people responsible for this tremendous violence means that we have to go in forms of chronological order. The chronological order goes back even further than Kamala Harris. But if we look at a collection of definitive evidence that's inescapable, that's when we have the Julie Sue, we have the Shirley Weber, we have the current AG's office. These are items where things are definitive that these parties are refusing to give services when violent attack and multiple attempts against my life have occurred. So the thumb of the legal rule of the priority of who the suspects are. Who are the suspects for doing the tremendous violence against the archive, for committing hellacious constitutional violations that would come with the death penalty? The generalized empirical rule of thumb is that we have hard evidence involving Julie Sue, Shirley Weber, the current AG's office, and the former AG's office, Kamala Harris. That means that since these parties aren't cooperating and withheld funding and entitlement, then they're the primary suspects for committing the violence. So we have obvious RICOs, multi-RICOs, and we have an archive full of solutions that has material even pertaining to national security. Again, we're talking death penalty violations. Death penalty violations. That means that the death penalty is what is applied at that last process of punishment after conviction. But since I filed insurrection panel papers, in many ways I'm in the driver's seat. I just don't see how anyone's going to be able to get around me when I arrive in Congress and say these delegates are disqualified, even though I have been fighting in an election, it would seem that I'm not getting the votes. There are reasons for this. An entire fleet, a convoy was stranded. An entire fleet has effectively been destroyed because of these other parties' actions. So why wouldn't they? You could ask various questions. There's a lot of questions like, why wouldn't they want to forward money they owe so that proper investigations could discover who these extremely violent people are? Think of the logic of that. The logic of why wouldn't they give you money they owed you so you could get on the ballot? Why wouldn't they give you money they owed you from shutting your businesses down in relation to massive attacks upon archives? The type of violations the Constitution says come with the death penalty. Why wouldn't they forward the money that they owe? What is their motive for not doing this? Again, they're in violation of oath of protecting the Constitution of the United States. When a candidate steps up and says, this is what's going on, and it's yet again another reason that I have to have the money that is owed me. Keep in mind, this is not a simple civil matter. These are criminal matters, as well as a civil liability. So the truth is, I'm trying to move forward with prosecutions, and these parties are blocking, they're inhibiting. So the reality is, regardless of who is actually responsible for the violence, we have to go with empirical methodology that would say, here is a set of list of the most likely suspects, and you have higher percentage, higher likelihoods. And because these parties are not cooperating, because they are so deep in the involvement of items of what they did, the methodology says that at this point in time in the investigation, any other ideas that you have need to be reevaluated. And they have to be considered the primary suspects of the violence. That somehow they don't want you to move forward with prosecutions. They don't want you to move forward with investigations because they're the ones responsible. They're the ones connected. Perhaps they're the ones actually doing everything. So the constitutional oath is an item that's clear. When we have parties who have violated their constitutional oath, Julie Su, Shirley Weber, the current AG's office of California, Kamala Harris violating her constitutional oath. These are items that have to be contended with. So the funny thing is that it doesn't matter that it goes back and forth this way, that way, and all these things in the election with the general vote. The American process of selection has a period dealing with the delegates. And delegates can be disqualified, frozen, sequestered. In effect, I've already laid that. This is in documents moving. But the complexities of the difference between the way our Constitution originally worked and the way a panel should work and the way that modernization of law is working are not on the same page. They're all on different pages. so to speak. So it doesn't matter if they think that they win and that all my efforts back and forth are meaningless and they won the vote. That all becomes meaningless when they've committed forms of fraud and other crimes in the course of the election, in the courses of items connected to elections and connected to archival interest and protections. Which means I reappear again, which is also the right of the panel to repeatedly continue to examine the matter and move forward again and again and again. If you read the Constitution and the articles, you would understand that a presidential candidate panel is a very powerful mechanism. So we have a situation where we have insurrection and mass rebellion. And there's different ways you could look at this. Some people have already stated that they feel that the Republicans are in insurrection as well as rebellion. Yet you have people that would also say that the Democrats are in rebellion. So we have all these people in rebellion doing what they think is the right thing, that are breaking rules, that are ignoring their duties, that are violating the Constitution. These are mass participations when you collectively look at them. My name is Michael Crosby. I was the first filed candidate to run for the presidency, and definitely the first candidate in modern history to step up and utilize the filing of presidential candidate powers, respective to filing full panel and full trial rights. I refuse to withdraw, so I am still a candidate for the presidency of the United States. Nor will I ever withdraw, because I have evidence. I do not have to withdraw when I have evidence. I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to people who bring things up atop to the table that are logical to work with, because we have many solutions that have to be implemented. Therefore, we must address them. Thank you.